Did you know that 75% of the United States is at risk of a damaging earthquake? Or that an earthquake once made the Mississippi River flow backward? And what if I told you that Boston's recent earthquake wasn't even the strongest one New England has ever felt? That's just the beginning. From rivers reversing course to record-shattering megaquakes, we're about to break down 25 mind-blowing US earthquake facts that just seem too wild to be real, but are 100% true. Fact number 25, the Boston earthquake of 2025 was not the strongest that Boston ever felt. Contrary to people's beliefs, the strongest earthquake New England ever experienced was the 1755 Cape Ann earthquake. At 6.0 and 6.3 on the Richter scale, it remains the largest earthquake in the history of Massachusetts. No one was killed, but it damaged hundreds of buildings in Boston and was felt as far north as Nova Scotia in Canada and as far south as South Carolina. If a similar quake shook Boston today, it would result in as much as $5 billion in damage and hundreds of deaths. Fact number 24, the largest earthquake in U.S. history took place in Alaska in 1964. With a magnitude of 9.2, it's the strongest North America has ever experienced and the fourth most powerful in the world. It lasted 4 minutes and was felt as far away as Seattle. It caused a tsunami that traveled across the Pacific Ocean, reaching as far as Japan and the Philippines. The tsunami, combined with the seismic activity, led to over 120 deaths in Alaska alone. The earthquake caused $2.7 billion in damages, equivalent to about $25 billion today. Fact number 23, the US was hit by the tallest tsunami ever recorded, 1,719 feet high. In 1958, Alaska's Lituya Bay was struck by a tsunami of unimaginable force. Triggered by a powerful 7.8 to 8.3 magnitude earthquake, a massive rock slide sent 90 million tons of debris crashing into the bay, unleashing a wave that soared to 1,719 feet, taller than the Empire State Building. Moving at 120 miles an hour, the mega tsunami uprooted 700-foot trees, carved out the landscape, and left scars that remain visible today. Even now, scientists are trying to understand how earthquakes generate such extreme waves. Could another mega tsunami strike again? Fact number 22, the San Francisco earthquake of 1906 is the deadliest in US history. With a magnitude of 7.7 to 8.3, it was felt from Oregon to Los Angeles and as far inland as central Nevada. More than 3,000 people died and over 80% of the city was destroyed, around 28,000 buildings. The earthquake lasted less than a minute but left more than 200,000 homeless. But you know what was even worse? The fire. It burned the city for 3 days, destroying much of the downtown area and some of the city's most iconic buildings. Fact number 21, the earthquake that made a river flow backwards? These weren't just any earthquakes. These were some of the weirdest in US history. Between 1811 and 1812, a series of massive earthquakes rocked New Madrid, Missouri, with such a force that church bells rang all the way in Boston, nearly 1,000 miles away. Homes in St. Louis, just 160 miles from the epicenter, were badly damaged. But the real shocker? The Mississippi River flowed backwards. How does that even happen? Well, the quakes caused huge sections of land near the river to suddenly sink by 5 to 20 feet in northeast Tennessee. At the same time, parts of the riverbed buckled and lifted, forcing waves of water to surge upstream. The result? A flood so extreme that it carved out an entirely new lake, Reelfoot Lake. And that wasn't the only one. Over in eastern Arkansas, another body of water, Lake St. Francis, formed when the ground collapsed and the St. Francis River rushed in to fill the gap. Oh, and if that wasn't wild enough, the quakes also ripped open 5-mile-long fissures in the earth. Fact number 20, the US is hit by 20,000 earthquakes a year, but you hardly notice. That's about 55 earthquakes every single day, but most of them go completely unnoticed. In 2023, only 2,296 of those quakes were strong enough to register at magnitude 2.5 or higher, and only 22 of them hit magnitude 4.5 or above, strong enough to rattle windows and shake buildings. But what about the truly massive quakes? Well, since 2000, the US has been rocked by 30 earthquakes of magnitude 6.0 or higher, the kind of thing that can bring entire cities to their knees. Fact number 19, the US suffers around $14.7 billion in earthquake damages annually. Most of that loss comes from California, accounting for nearly 2/3 of all earthquake-related damages. Fact number 18, the majority of earthquakes in or near the US happen along the West Coast. But they aren't just a West Coast thing. In fact, earthquakes have struck 39 US states since 1900. It's not just California or Alaska that need to worry. But do you know which states don't have to worry about earthquakes? Fact number 17, Florida, Iowa, North Dakota, and Wisconsin have never had a major earthquake. While earthquakes are common in the US states, these 4 states have never experienced any significant seismic activity. Lucky them. Do you understand why people love Florida? Exactly. They prefer hurricanes over earthquakes. Just kidding. But do you know which state has the most earthquakes during a year? Fact number 16, Alaska is the most seismically active state in the US. Alaska has more earthquakes than any other state, accounting for over 50% of all seismic activity in the US every year. Just to give you an idea, Alaska has 50 to 100 earthquakes daily and accounts for 11% of the world's earthquakes. No wonder it's the 3rd least populated state of the US, with 750,000 people living in there. Talking about population leads to fact number 15. Nearly 75% of the US population could experience damaging earthquake shaking at some point. Yeah, you heard that right. This means that now, in 2025, it will make over 250 million people. The highest risk areas are on the West Coast in California, Oregon, Washington, and Alaska. Moreover, the scientists calculated that around 49 million people are somewhat likely to experience a damaging earthquake in the next 50 years, meaning they have a 50% chance of feeling strong shaking. That's a pretty eerie forecast for a nation where most people live in buildings that do not meet seismic safety requirements. Talking about buildings, fact number 14, California, Alaska, and Oregon have some of the strictest earthquake-resistant building codes in the US. However, California's seismic building codes are the most well-developed and widely enforced, given its long history of devastating earthquakes, such as the 1989 Loma Prieta quake. The first one that led to stricter regulations was 1971 San Fernando earthquake, 6.6 magnitudes. And after Loma Prieta came the 1994 Northridge earthquake that lasted just 8 seconds with a 6.8 magnitude. 57 people died and more than 9,000 were injured. In addition, property damage was estimated to be $13 to $50 billion, making it amongst the costliest natural disasters in U.S. history. After this earthquake, the regulations were updated one more time. Currently, structures are required to withstand at least a 6.3 magnitude earthquake. Talking about Loma Prieta, here are some historical quake facts. Fact number 13, the 1989 Loma Prieta earthquake struck during the World Series, making it the first major quake ever broadcast live on TV. Not even kidding on this one. It was caught live on TV and still sends chills to this day. Perhaps it was a combination of timing and the national sport of the U.S. baseball that made this earthquake hard to forget. Fact number 12, the 2024 Cape Mendocino earthquake reached a magnitude of 7.0, reminding us just how powerful California's seismic activity can be. Fact number 11, the 2019 Red Crest earthquakes were California's strongest in 20 years, measuring 7.1 on the Richter scale. Overall, the damage was around $5 billion. You might think all earthquakes are on the West Coast, but that's not the case. I'll explain later why the West Coast is so seismically active, but for now, let's move east. Fact number 10, East Coast earthquakes are often felt over much larger areas than their West Coast counterpart. Eastern North America has older rocks, some of which formed hundreds of millions of years before those in the West. These older formations have been exposed to extreme pressures and temperatures, making them harder and often denser. Faults in these older rocks have also had more time to heal, which allows seismic waves to cross them more effectively when an earthquake occurs. In contrast, rocks in the West are younger and broken up by faults that are often younger and have had less time to heal. So when an earthquake occurs, the faults absorb more seismic wave energy, and the energy doesn't spread as efficiently. The circle sizes correspond to earthquake magnitude, ranging from 4.0 to 5.9. The largest was in the Gulf of Mexico. Talking about the East leads us to fact number 9. The 2011 Virginia earthquake was felt by 1/3 of the U.S. population. It came out of nowhere and was felt by over 100 million people in the U.S., stretching from Georgia to Canada. Even the Washington Monument took a hit. What about earthquakes due to human behavior? Fact number 8, Oklahoma's earthquake surge, and it's not Mother Nature's fault. For most of its history, Oklahoma wasn't exactly known for earthquakes, but that all changed in the 2010s. In 2011, a 5.7 magnitude quake rocked the state, injuring residents and damaging 200 buildings. By 2014, Oklahoma had become the most seismically active state in the lower 48, even surpassing California with 3 times as many earthquakes. So, what happened? Well, it turns out these weren't just natural disasters. Scientists widely agree that the oil and gas industry is to blame. Specifically, the massive injection of wastewater from drilling, especially from fracking, has been linked to this dramatic rise in earthquakes. This process, called induced seismicity, is literally causing the ground to shake. Fact number 7, the Pacific Ring of Fire is responsible for 90% of the world's earthquakes. It is an area of high seismic activity that encircles the Pacific Ocean. This zone includes countries like Japan, Indonesia, and Chile, as well as U.S. states like California, Oregon, Washington, and Alaska. The tectonic activity in the Pacific Ring of Fire is a result of the movement of multiple tectonic plates, including the Pacific Plate, the North American Plate, and the Juan de Fuca Plate. The U.S. West Coast is particularly vulnerable to earthquakes because it lies along the boundaries of these plates, which leads us to one of the most destructive faults in the world. Fact number 6, the San Andreas Fault is often regarded as one of the most destructive due to its location. This fault runs more than 800 miles through California and is the boundary between the Pacific and North American tectonic plates. Over time, the San Andreas Fault moves at a rate of approximately 2 inches per year, which is about the same speed at which human fingernails grow. While this rate may seem slow, over thousands of years, it results in significant shifts in the Earth's crust. The San Andreas Fault is capable of producing large earthquakes with magnitudes above 7.0. Despite the fault's relatively slow movement, the potential for a massive earthquake in California remains high. To be more precise, fact number 5, Southern California has a 75% chance of a major San Andreas earthquake within 30 years. Scientists estimate there's a 75% chance that a magnitude 7.0 earthquake will strike Southern California within the next 30 years. The last time the southern section of the fault ruptured was in 1857, and experts believe it's long overdue for another big one. When that happens, the damage could be catastrophic. Collapsed highways, widespread blackouts, and millions affected in the Los Angeles area alone. The question isn't if it will happen, it's when. Fact number 4, the Yellowstone Caldera is a sleepy giant. The Yellowstone Caldera in Wyoming is a massive supervolcano that has the potential to produce earthquakes and other geological hazards. Although Yellowstone has not erupted in over 640,000 years, scientists continue to monitor the area closely due to the potential for future volcanic activity. If Yellowstone were to erupt, it would cause massive earthquakes and release enough ash and lava to affect much of the U.S. and beyond. While the likelihood of a catastrophic eruption in the near future is low, the region experiences hundreds of minor earthquakes each year, many of which are related to the movement of magma beneath the surface. If Yellowstone erupts, it could trigger earthquakes of magnitude 7.0 or higher with devastating consequences. The Cascadia Subduction Zone is another ticking time bomb. The Cascadia Subduction Zone is a 600-mile-long fault off the coast of the Pacific Northwest where the Juan de Fuca Plate is sliding beneath the North American Plate. This fault is capable of producing earthquakes with magnitudes greater than 9.0, making it one of the largest and most dangerous seismic zones in the U.S. Scientists have discovered that the last major earthquake in this region occurred around 1700, and another megaquake is expected to occur eventually. The threat posed by the Cascadia Subduction Zone is significant, as a large earthquake could trigger massive tsunamis that could flood coastal areas in Washington, Oregon, and Northern California. Fact number 2, the Cascadia megaquake has a 10% chance of striking in the next 50 years. The Cascadia Subduction Zone isn't just a threat, it's a countdown. Seismologists estimate there's a 1 in 10 chance, 10%, that a magnitude 9.0 earthquake will hit the Pacific Northwest within the next 10 years. To put that in perspective, that's the same odds as rolling a 6 on a die, but with millions of lives at stake. If this happens, it won't just shake cities like Seattle and Portland, it will send a tsunami racing towards the coast, flattening everything in its path. FEMA has already warned that tens of thousands could die, and the region could be cut off from power, water, and emergency aid for months. With just 15 minutes of warning before a tsunami hits, the real question is, will anyone be ready? Fact number 1, the New Madrid seismic zone is one of the most active earthquake zones in the US. When people think of earthquakes in the US, California usually comes to mind, but deep in the central US, the New Madrid seismic zone, NMSZ, is one of the country's most active and potentially dangerous fault systems. Stretching across Arkansas, Missouri, Tennessee, Kentucky, and Illinois, this fault zone was responsible for one of the most violent earthquake sequences in American history, the 1811 to 1812 New Madrid earthquakes. These quakes were estimated to be magnitude 7.0 to 8.0, powerful enough to shake buildings in St. Louis, ring church bells in Boston, and even make the Mississippi River flow backward for a brief time. Massive fissures split the ground and entire landscapes were reshaped. Today, the NMSZ remains seismically active, though its recent earthquakes have been much smaller. Since 1974, over 4,000 earthquakes have been recorded in the zone, most too small to be felt, but scientists warn that the region is far from safe. The U.S. Geological Survey, USGS, estimates a 7 to 10% chance of another massive earthquake like those of 1811 to 1812 within the next 50 years, and a 25 to 40% chance of a magnitude 6.0 earthquake in the same time frame. In other words, while it may be quiet now, the New Madrid seismic zone is far from being over. There you have it. 25 earthquake facts that you probably didn't know. What was your favorite? If you liked this video, like it and subscribe. I'll see you in the next one.